This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. In today's episode, I'm going to follow the theme of recent weeks where I share another short bite. This time it's from episode 111, where Michael Caulfield, an experienced sports psychologist who works in elite professional football and other sports, he goes on to share with me his definition of mental toughness in elite professional football. He also goes on to highlight his role in helping managers in this space. And if you've tuned into this podcast in the past, you'll be well aware that my take on mental toughness is that it's all about how you deal with pressure, how it is that you deal with challenges. Michael goes on to add some fascinating thoughts on this topic. You hit on a point there where you talked about dealing with failure and rejection, just like a footballer. A centre forward could miss 9 times and then finally score on their 10th opportunity and keep going and keep going. You've obviously had to do that as a sports psychologist.
You do, because there's some months which are a little bit barren, to be honest with you, because in the main, we're mostly self-employed because we're consultants. If you get the chance to work for a governing body or an organisation and get a full-time role, take it with every possible hand you have to grasp it. Otherwise, probably like yourself, David, you have to find work and invoice for work and deliver good work. And that sometimes it goes up and down. You have great months and you have quieter months. So you have to get used to that and rejection and people saying no. And life is actually about that as well, because everyone else in sport only ever talks about winning and the winning mindsets and the winning culture and high performance. And actually sport a lot of the time is about rejection and getting beaten and handling that. And I've got several PhDs in getting beat, I can assure you. And it's not always about the comfortable stuff. And you have to go through that really, edgy, is this going to work moment before you get to the other side. If you get to the other side, because you never quite get to that. I don't think you ever quite get to the other side. It's just always a process to keep going, always.
On that score, then, what would you say is your definition of mental toughness in a football context?
I would say two things. Off the pitch, it's the ability to deal with the scrutiny and the criticism and the howling gale of criticism that will come your way, because it will. If you work in football, if you play or coach in football, you have to learn to deal with the relentless scrutiny and comments which you wouldn't use in any other walk of life at all. On the pitch, it's still having the courage to want the ball when you're having a horrible game, a horrible run, a horrible season, a horrible period of form. You can't, the ball feels like a hand grenade. It's the size of a golf ball. You don't know what's going to happen next. But the courage to go out and still want to have the ball and perform when nothing, and I mean nothing, is going your way, is a sign to me of resilience and mental toughness. And those are answers you won't find in any academic journal either, because you won't get that sort of comment in an academic journal. You just wouldn't. But you have to deal with the side of football which no one likes, but you have to learn to deal with it. And that's the rejection, the defeat, the scrutiny and the criticism. And once you're on the pitch, you must want the ball, because if you don't, it will eventually blow up in your face.
So I know you've worked with and supported different managers, obviously, and players. Could you just give an insight into the managerial role and as you say, the criticism, the challenges, and how you as a sports psychologist would help a football manager?
I've worked with 5, I think, really, and that's, I can list them. I'd like to work with Gareth Southgate, Steve Bruce, Mick Phelan, Dean Smith, and now Thomas Frank. All very different personalities, different stages of their career, different backgrounds, different philosophies. It's a very lonely job being a coach, particularly a head coach. And in the main, my job is to support and understand and encourage, of course, and listen. Now and again, which is once a year, probably maybe twice at most, to say, have you got a minute? And they say, what? And you go, you might not want to hear this, and you deliver a bit of feedback, to use the current word, which no one else in the club might offer, because they could be his assistant coach or the head of medical or whatever, and they're nervous to give that feedback to say, are you sure we've got this right? Not in terms of tactics and selection, I never get involved with that. But if their behaviour is slightly erratic or not helping them or the team or their own career, I've got to step in and say, now and again, careful here, because otherwise they're like the pilot being told that the plane's going to crash, but no one's got the courage to tell him or her. So you have to have the courage to speak up and help them, particularly when it's going not so well, because I've worked for 3 clubs and I've been involved in 3 promotions, playoffs from the championship, but also some relegations too. So I'd like to think I know when to interrupt when we're going well and when we're not going so well. And that takes experience, that takes courage, because you won't always get it right, but it's your duty to speak up and to support, particularly in times of adversity.
So in some ways, as the sports psychologist, you've got to be able to park your ego to one side and try not to put them on a pedestal as well. In effect, look at them on an equal playing field.
It's a good point, because there's some quite well-known names in that list, of which I'm very proud that that they've become people I still talk to and respect. You can't put them on a pedestal, because then you're just fawning at them and looking, oh gosh, aren't they amazing? You just have to see them as what they are, which is the head coach of an organisation. And as a head coach of any organisation, the one thing they're guaranteed to do is make mistakes. There's a piece of some research out there which says 80% of the time they make mistakes or make the wrong decision. I don't get involved, I stress, in selection and tactics and recruitment, because that's not my job. It really isn't. But my job is to support and encourage and correct and give feedback when it's necessary and appropriate. So I do. Do I always get it right? Absolutely not. But I always do it with the best intentions.
I'm very grateful for Michael sharing his experiences. For more on this, you can listen to episode 111, which is great value. This short bite, however, highlights our role as a sports psychologist, as well as the harsh realities of elite professional football. Michael's experiences, well, do relate to the elite end of the pyramid. However, even if you go all the way down to grassroots football, everyone has opinion. And with the advent of social media, they certainly like to showcase their views, and often in a very, very harsh way. So, this is the topic I'd like to hone in on now. I'd like you to consider criticism, and indeed praise. It's important to think about this, especially if you want to improve your responses and your behaviour. Firstly, do you value criticism or praise from other people? Why is that? And who's it from? It's fair to say that we all like to hear nice things said about us. But do the words of others carry more weight? And who? For a lot of players, it's their coach who can really impact how they feel. For others, it's their teammates or their parents. Who is it from you? Think about this from the angle of confidence. Picture a glass of water that's half full. Half full in this case represents confidence. If you are strongly criticised, how much of this water, or this confidence in this case, would be removed? Does it differ depending on who the person is? And then likewise on praise. Does the water or the confidence level increase? And again, by how much? Does the person involved have a bigger impact? Another thing to consider about criticism is, how well does the person actually know you? Are they simply a keyboard warrior? Or is it your parent or your coach, where you've got a reasonably close relationship? Or maybe not. Your relationship with them should matter. I'd like to think that the better your relationship is, the more that they know about you, about how much you put into things, how much you put into your football or your profession. The more that they know who you are, how much time you invest in yourself, in your football, in your sport or your profession, what you do in your training, what you do in your spare time, what's important to you, is valuable. On the mental toughness side, if you are very stoic and you don't show a lot of emotion and simply let things get to you internally, you don't express this to the other people, perhaps, this is part of the issue. Maybe you don't actually open up enough for people to get to know you and show how invested you are in your football or your profession. Do they know your true thoughts and feelings? If not, why is that? Really question yourself. And one last thing to throw into the mix here is, other people you cannot control. You can, however, control you in your responses. So please do give it some thought, some of the things that I've mentioned here in this short podcast. And for more thoughts on dealing with criticism and other challenges that you're likely to encounter in your sport and in your life, feel free to sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter that I create and share on a regular basis, which has many resources attached to it to help you. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.